wield it. We can watch it go up in flames. Because we killed him with pride fulfilled it. We will watch it go up in flames.
Welcome back to the Getting Lit podcast. Last episode, we spoke to Lucas Smith about his collection, Spare Us Yet. And today we're honored to be joined by Mr. Bruce Wagner, who I don't mind saying to his face is one of my favorite American writers. So we're discussing his latest novel from Arcade Publishing, Amputation, which is sort of a apocalyptic, satirical, and sometimes quite funny survey of the LA fires.
That describes all of my books.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, so basically the book covers this year's LA fires, the start of this year, and it is a wonderful kind of tour de force about all that. We'll get into that. But welcome and thanks for joining us today, Bruce.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so just in terms of the genesis of this book, I wanted to get a read on like where you were at the time of the fires, like what were you doing? Were you in LA and what was your experience of this stuff?
Yeah. I should probably preface this by saying that there had just been an essay by John Pistelli in the Metropolitan Review about my work, kind of looking back on my so-called oeuvre. And in that, he had said that I had, this was before Amputation, that I was finished writing, which is what I had been saying. It wasn't earth-shattering news. It wasn't Philip Roth making the announcement, but it certainly was Bruce Wagner making the announcement. Because after 14 novels, I realized that it just took too much out of me, to write a book, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And, I was tired, so I talked about that. And I don't think it's anomalous for writers to be in that mood, but I really promoted it. And then, the fires happened in January, around the 7th of January. And I had many, many friends, as anyone that lives in Los Angeles or has lived here for any amount of time, even a short while. You had people that lost their homes entirely, people that owned their homes and lost them, people that were renting homes and lost them. And if you weren't one of those people, you certainly knew, if you weren't one yourself who had lost your home. Megan Dom, whose podcast I did a few weeks ago, she was renting a house, lost it. You certainly knew more than a half dozen people who lost their homes. So I had very close friends in the Palisades and in Altadena who went through that and were evacuated and had to live elsewhere. One of my friends was close to 80 years old, and so I stepped in and got her an Airbnb elsewhere for 3 months, et cetera, et cetera. And I slowly became so outraged, at how blithe the handling of the fires was, at the sheer corruption and incompetence, which is our lot. Human beings are so mentally ill and damaged, and to have any faith in them at all is almost an absurdity. They're very good at death, organizing death and destruction. And this proved that out as well. But it was really rage that made me write this book. And it was a short book for me, about 200 pages, probably my shortest book. I think The Empty Chair is maybe the one that comes after that. But so many of my books are motivated by rage because that's simply my nature. But in this case, I'm Aries, so I'm a fire sign, writing about the fire, and finding a way to do that was not political, because to write a political book for me with a political agenda is an absurdity. It's the death of art, to be polemical. I'm not of that ilk as a writer. I'm more of a writer that explores human nature and the sacred, So I wrote this book in a kind of shockingly short period of time. When I finished it, I felt like I'd been working on it for months, but I finished it sometime in February, really.
Wow.
The fires happened on the 7th, and in the meantime, I was moving people. I was doing a lot of other things. At a certain point, I think I got run down and got the flu or something, and I just lay in bed and worked on it. And I said, I was talking to someone. I said, I have a new book I've just finished. What's it about? The fires. They said, well, how quickly did you write that? And I said, like 3 months. 3-4 months. And they said, well, it's February. The fires were in early January. So I realized that kind of the strange propulsiveness of this project. You're always, at least I am, more or less inhabited. It's like a home invasion, a book, you know what I mean? And in this case, it happened very quickly. So that was the genesis of it,
Yeah. I could sense that, like, as we said at the top, there's always like a good dose of humor, and satire, and like engaging with like Hollywood fame, all of that stuff in your work. But you could sense like the underlying sort of power of the rage stuff there, without it being, like you said, polemical. And I just know as well, like, I felt that too. Like, I have friends in LA as well, and when you work in media as well, like, everyone in media knew someone, or at least knew someone who knew someone who was affected by it. So yeah, there was like, obviously you bashed it out, and you can sense that rage there. But it's not like this. It's not necessarily a negative experience. It's just like you can feel the power, Yeah, obviously.
Well, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
The undertow of all my books is a kind of rage.
Mm.
And that's what I then have to balance, because for me to write a screed, to write something poisonous, you also have to have the antidote,
Yeah.
That's why with my two novellas, The Met Gala and Tales of Saints and Seekers, originally I was going to call The Met Gala Poison and Saints and Seekers Antidote. So in this case, and in many of my books, the antidote is taken at the same time as the poison, because particularly now at 71, but I always believed this even in my 30s when I was writing. Nihilism is something that is also a part of my nature. But to present nihilism for nihilism's sake, I'm opposed to. It's not something. It's unnatural for me,
And I always feel like nihilism, it goes against even writing a book in the first place as well. Like, I feel like you're like, even putting something out into the world kind of contradicts a sort of nihilistic.
Well, I don't mean really nihilism as a philosophy. I mean, you take a writer like Celine, or Sod. You don't really find the sacred in 120 Days of Sodom, nor do you in the works of Celine. But those works have can have a sacred resonance. It's really not so literal, but for me, I think the objections to my work is that my work can have what the wrong-headed might call sentimentality, but for me is tenderness and poignance, and people often want everything really on a pornographic scale. Give me ultra violence, and don't fuck around and do anything. Don't tamper with ultra violence, So, so that was what was behind Amputation. How can I do this? And I went back to a template that also comes naturally to me, which is a small cast of primary characters, a small cast of secondary characters, and alternating between those characters as one would in any kind of narrative, for balance, or simply when one tires of one. In the book, Stephen Colbert, the talk show host, is pinned beneath a tree for pretty much the entire book. How to do that, without the loser, the reader losing interest. How to do that with Karen Bass, this complete cipher, the mayor of Los Angeles, this cardboard cutout kind of AI creation. If you were to ask AI, give me a cardboard cipher for a public servant, what would it look like? What would it sound like? How to write about her in a way that's not caricatured, a way that goes deeper into character, my imagination of character. And then I used many real people. I have a close friend from childhood who's a libel and defamation attorney. And she couldn't wait to get her hands on this book because I told her a little bit about it. And when she heard Stephen Colbert, Karen Bass, and she was reading as a lawyer for the first 50 pages and looking things up. And when she saw that everything was true that was in the book, except, of course, when I'm writing about fictional people, but even the fiction is surrounded by a garden of truth, she stopped reading as a lawyer and simply read it as someone that likes novels, So the book is so deeply embedded in real events and real people, and that they're almost inextricable from the work.
So that's actually goes into one thing I've always wanted to ask you, which is because you often use real people, celebrities, and things like that in your work. Have you ever been I shouldn't do this, I might get in some kind of litigation or something like that? That's a very basic question, I know, but it's something that's always interests me.
It wouldn't be me who had that fear. It would be the publishers, right?
Yeah.
And not really, because it is not, I never skewer real people, really, not even this book. Dead Stars, I had a long narrative about Michael Douglas.
Yeah, that's my favorite narrative in that book. I love that.
Yeah, major character with a cancer, and it's never to. I don't do what they do on certain talk shows in America, which is toxic. I don't hold a character up for ridicule. Because why would I do that? Do you know what I mean? I've had many people who've wanted to be in my books, I just ran into Larry Kazaruski, I think that's his name. I have a terrible time pronouncing last names. He's a wonderful screenwriter that did Man on the Moon with his partner,
Oh yeah.
and also did The People versus Larry Flint and the O.J. Simpson television series, and Ed Wood,
Oh, amazing.
And
Yeah.
he recognized me and came up to me and said, I'm so appreciative you put me in Amputation. I'd completely forgotten that I put him in Amputation because I read these books in a kind of, paroxysm, you know what I mean? So there's many people that have wanted to be in my books. I've never been sued. David Geffen came up to me one time at a party and said, "Why did you do that to Arnie Klein?" This was back during the days of I'm Losing You. Arnie Klein was a famed dermatologist, and I presented a character that resembled him as a kind of pusher, kind of a dope pusher. And, that was David's interpretation, was that was Arnie Klein, and why. And Neil Simon was so upset. I'm dating myself with that. But the only one time I had a celebrity that I had a scene where someone was going to see a celebrity shrink. Maybe that was in I'm Losing You Too. I can't. Maybe it was Still Holding.
So, yeah.
So I can't remember.
I'm reading I'm
So,
Losing You at the moment, so I'm pretty sure it's the Calliope character.
Calliope, yeah. So her maybe someone was waiting to see her, and a famous person was on their way out of her office at the same time, and the publisher said that you cannot say that particular famous person is seeing a therapist. And I said, "What are you talking about? This is California.
They're all
Everyone's
seeing.
there's nothing defamatory about that." And she said, "In New York there is. And if this actor wishes to litigate, they would have a case." It was an absurdity. I have a publisher now that does not give a fuck about those kind of niceties. He's an attorney. I remember in Roar, on the back of the book, I wanted real names of people giving blurbs. Now, if you've ever been a writer, or even in publishing in any small way, you know that is the nuclear issue. You cannot do that. It is completely taboo. So I found a way around it. Everyone said the exact same thing. So if they were to litigate, it would be, this is clearly someone browsing in a bookstore. If they would look at they would say, well, how can Oprah Winfrey say the same thing as Sharon Tate, who's dead? Do you know what I mean? Because it wasn't a joke book. It's a serious novel, Roar. And yet I just thought I wanted to do that. And Tony said, absolutely, So these are the things that come up. I wrote a book called A Guide for Murdered Children, and I wrote it under a pseudonym, which it's reissued by Arcade under my name. And it's a kind of supernatural foray for me. And Barnes & Noble objected to the title because they thought some people would take that as a handbook, take it literally. And it made them sense because a murdered child, it's not a guide for murdering children. But I only mention that because of the niceties of legalisms proliferate like weeds if you let them get out of control. So the shorter answer is no one has ever even come close to that, because it would be they would be strongly advised not to. They would say it would only increase the sales. In that regard, I wish I had been sued by multiple people. Yeah.
But have you ever got a publisher sort of say to you, like, can we just say like, just for example, like the Michael Douglas, can we just turn him into a, Michael Douglas-like character? And like, what would you say to someone saying that to you? Like, what is the purpose of using the actual?
Listen, I had good fortune. I early on um, kind of had some artistic heft. And even when I wrote for the New Yorker or I wrote for magazines, nothing could be changed without my agreeing, which is not the case with many writers. And writing novels is can be, but my experience, it was not like Hollywood where something like that would come in someone's sleep,
Notes.
So no, I always had editors. I rarely had a line editor. Susan Campbell was who oversaw Force Majeure, was that was the only line edit I'd ever had, an old school approach, an editor going over the book, paragraph by paragraph, line by line. I think she was Salman Rushdie's editor as well early on. But then it was just, I was blessed, it was whatever I wrote. And with Tony Lyons at Arcade, Skyhorse, we're publishing William Bowman next year. We've just published David Mamet's new novel. And I'm a kind of consigliere editor now on staff at Arcade. He wouldn't dare. He wouldn't dare. He comes from a literary tradition. His father taught English literature at Hunter College, American literature, I'm sorry. And he has the utmost respect for the written word and for writers and artists, and impossible. So I got very lucky. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. Like in my experience too, like just in the publishing industry here, that's very rare, surprisingly, to someone have that sort of deep respect for writers.
It's not surprisingly.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
Perhaps to outsiders, it's surprisingly.
Now it's far worse now. I mean, the idea of starting off now, that's why people go to Substack and it's like the Metropolitan Review, because no one's going to take a shit on their work. I know many people that were canceled, and I'm certain I know many people who were approached and said, please change this word, etc. One of my own books was canceled, but I don't have, babies and mouths to feed in that regard. So I think it's grotesque. It's grotesque.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you get into a lot of trouble with any other publisher, especially around the little J sections in this book. But that's thank God for Arcade, who we have really championed as well, because we love what they do. So like just complete sort of complete like artistic freedom, which is sort of what we need. So you were talking about before the genesis of this book, and I did want to get into like a little bit of the craft details in terms of this. I got the sense from what you were saying there that you basically do what you do with your books normally, how you go about writing them, just on an accelerated pace. Would that be accurate, or was there something different this time because it was such a like current book, I guess?
I don't think there was anything different. Was there more urgency because I wanted the book to come out sooner? I think a writer always wants a book to come out sooner, but it wouldn't have mattered if the book came out in January or February of next year. It still would have most likely have been the first book about the fire. Not that that was my goal. It might be the only book about them. I don't know. So no, I would say that once that kind of tortured process begins, it has a life and mind of its own, So I can't see the only different thing, but it really happened with Met Gala and Tales of Saints and Seekers. Those were two discrete sections, very loosely. The Empty Chair was also two novellas, but those were completely interwoven, much more difficult. Tales of Saints and Seekers was a compendium, a fictional anthology of Sufi tales, contemporary, whereas the Met Gala was like a Grand Guignol opera. Do you know what I mean? Hyper contemporary, and nearly pornographic in its conception. So those books, those novellas, you have an expiration date that you can see, like the vanilla cream in my refrigerator is 10 weeks off. It goes bad. So, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and often in writing a longer book, there's no light for a long time. And then when there is light, it's still a glimmer, it's like the light under a door of a hallway that's 100 yards away. And then it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. So that would be the only benefit of amputation. I had an event, and then I had events that took place before that, a few months before and a few months after. But I always had the main event, and I knew that it was going to not be a very long book. But I didn't, that's how it presented itself. You always have these fantasies as a novelist that this book should be 300. This book should be, this is going to be 800 pages, I think James Ellroy is one of the few authors that I know who loves those doorstop books. He's committed to them. Do you know what I mean? And I certainly am not. And the older I get, you get closer to Beckett. You want the work to be shorter, more concise. But even that's a lie that I've just told right now, because however a book presents itself, you really have no control over.
Yeah. So with amputation itself, one of the things I got in this that, and tell me if I'm wrong, but like in terms of your sense of rage out of this, it's something that I have like really struggled with in the current day as well, is that officials, especially now, public servants and stuff like that, there is no responsibility for anything. Like, no, people used to resign in disgrace if if like the littlest thing went wrong. But I got the sense in this, like, especially
Japan, they kill themselves.
Yes, yeah. There's apologies in Japan if like the trains are a second late or something, but like, I get the sense as well in, and I like that you mentioned your sort of resistance to polemicism, because there's a sense in the Karen Bass chapters that you're talking about this, like, kind of, what is it, skiving, or it's something that like is the public servant just is incapable of taking responsibility. It's always like it's crisis management, and crisis management is just basically to avoid responsibility until the news cycle moves on, whereas
it's like damage control for like publicity rather than actually managing the crisis.
Yeah. And like, I think you get it that in especially in those chapters with the Karen Bass as a character, but you also don't like make her out to be this, inhuman like caricature or something like that. And that makes it like kind of even more poignant to me, because it's like this person isn't like what you might see in like various right-wing memes on the internet about like this person is like an evil servant of the DEI elder gods or something like that. They're actually like a fully formed human who is in some ways it kind of they're instructed to avoid responsibility. Like that's the point of the job,
Well, I have been thinking about this. Having a conversation with someone this morning, and this is as political as this is going to get for me, because it just doesn't interest me all that much, because, Carlos Castaneda once told me, he said, the naked ape is ill. I really do believe that. So if you become political as an artist, then you become delusional in at the same time, because you either have the audacity or narcissism to imagine that you calling attention to certain things will evince a change, and then you get self-righteous and you begin believing your own press. So to me, I really avoid that. I'm much more like a stenographer, than I am even an anthropologist. But my conversation with someone this morning was everyone in the Pacific Palisades that I knew a lot of them, that had lived there for decades, said that this fire was handled in a way that no other fires had been handled before in their time there, which made sense because the people that were in charge of fighting the fires were new and didn't do their due diligence by any means. And a friend of mine lived about a mile from the reservoir, which was empty, and about a mile from where the early fire was started in January by the arsonist that they've now arrested and who is the scapegoat for all of this. What everyone in the Palisades knew, it was the word on the street, and then the word came directly from the mouths of people that I spoke to, was that they didn't monitor. Once you put that fire out, you have to sit on it for 3 days. You have to keep fire trucks nearby because it will smolder. And 3 days. Well, if you talk to anyone, particularly people on the left, in the weeks following the fire, it would be nothing could be done. The winds, there's no way though you could fight those winds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you would get people saying to your face, it did not matter that there was not water in the reservoir. It did not matter that half of the fire trucks were out of commission. It did not matter that the fire hydrants were broken. They will literally tell you that. And then slowly over the past month, reports have come in from retired fire captains that it was completely criminal and derelict for them not to have sat on that fire and done thermal probes, etc. And then the LA Times published an article recently. There was a federal study saying that everything was mishandled in essence, and the LA Times did this article where they spoke to someone that was overseeing the fire in the Palisades, who was out of town at the time. And this is what he said. He said, could things have been done differently? Yes. Do I have absolute faith in the way things were handled? Absolutely. And it reminded me of when the word came out on multiple news agencies that the phrase they wanted to use for Joe Biden's mental acuity was sharp as a tack. So the word absolutely became kind of a weird gospel that excuses everything. In other words, as long as you can demonstrate for the record that you had absolute faith in the debacle, that the debacle was handled well, that's enough. You are excused, So these were actually, that was the kind of obstacle course I had during the writing of that book, because I would never have published it if I had begun to skew toward an expose or something like that. I have no interest in an expose because from time immemorial, man has shown again and again his catastrophic incompetence and rush toward death, in essence. The book was called Amputation because before I started writing it, I'd been listening to an interview with a resident that had lost their home in Altadena. And they said, it is as if two cities were amputated from Los Angeles. And I thought that would be the title to use, and I really couldn't find any other books or anything of any note that had been called that in the world of fiction. So, yeah.
When you say, you're avoiding the political, and I kind of agree with you that that's an artist. Artists can engage with the political, but once you get into that polemic territory, the art definitely suffers. What would you say to those people, usually of a particular political persuasion, who say, all art is political? Like, they always say that. Have you ever heard this? How they say, like, even saying it's not political is political. This is what they say, which is funny because I feel like every time they're saying it, like, it's always someone of a particular persuasion ideologically, and they're trying to fit, like, either this book is bad because it fits this politics.
Those people, they're not artists, and even if
commissars.
Even if they make the claim, they are bureaucrats, and they're cultural bureaucrats, and the cultural bureaucrats are the ones that cancel books and cancel authors. I mean, I think did you have Emily Russo on the show?
We did. We love Emily. Yeah.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
A poet, fine poet, writing for a small press. And the people that were those publishers of a small press, outwardly, it looks like a lovely, worthwhile thing that those people are doing. And those people were roaches, calling for essentially publicly the slander and cancellation of this poet who is not political in the least. I don't see her work as political. So those are dangerous people, I think someone like that had something to say about something Bob Dylan had done in the past few years. And when Dylan heard what they had to say, he said, they can go to hell, which they already are receiving mail in. So it seemed redundant for him to say that, So you can't pay attention to any of that. There's so much you cannot pay attention to, Matthew. You can't pay attention to book sales. You can't pay attention to critics. That's the death of the artist as well. Yeah.
I'm reminded of, have you seen that clip of Quentin Tarantino responding to someone talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and how the Sharon Tate character has no lines or something like that? And his response is perfect. He's just like, I just reject the hypothesis. Like, and that's what you need to do, right? Like, you just need to reject the hypothesis. Hi there, listeners. Sorry to interrupt. We really appreciate you listening to us, but if you'd like to hear more from us, you should check out our Patreon. Go to patreon.com/gettinglit and gain access to our exclusive bonus content, including Back Matter, a special after show where we chat a little bit more informally with our guests, usually about a film or something else related to the main episode. For just $5, you get access to these bonus episodes, as well as the full archive of every episode we've ever done. For more details and to get the most out of your Getting Lit podcast experience, go to patreon.com/gettinglit. Thanks for listening. Okay, back to the show.
Well, it's not just that. It's what I was saying. The naked ape is ill. You had the family of Sharon Tate with all of these protestations because no one knew what the movie was about. And I'm wondering, would they have said the same thing if they knew that the movie was this fantasia, this kind of intensely moving, gorgeous resurrection of their daughter? and their sister. They might possibly have said the same. I understand the intimacy of it, and I'm not faulting them for it. But so often the trigger is pulled. Man's impulse is to pull the trigger, you know. And I have the machine gun of my my computer, you know, and I fire at will, but I know what my targets are, you know, and it goes beyond the targets, though, what I'm doing, because if I have enmity or spite, Bruce Wagner may have it, but the person that's writing these books is indifferent, you know. It's the books come from a place of silence. They don't come from a place of riot and noise, you know. So I think that if that time came when I would be writing screeds, you know, if I didn't have the sense to stop, or I had too much pride to stop, I would hope that people would say, this is what he did before he did that, you know.
Yeah, I think if you're not
paying attention, you know.
if you haven't done it yet, I don't think you're going to do it, Bruce. So it's,
you're saying I'm near dead.
But no, you've had an august career of not doing that. So, but talking about the what we're talking about, this responsibility, like I wonder as well with this book, do you think there's a link between like this failure of civic duty and the culture of fame that you've like basically built a career, you know, talking about sort of for decades, really? Like, do you think there's that same addiction to image and like avoidance of consequence that, you know, is very operative in celebrity culture, and this is like now transferred to like the public servant realm, you know? Do you think there's something to that?
I don't. I don't, because it's what we're really looking at is the self, you know, capital S. And the self is the fifth column. The self is the thing that overrules sanity and that kind of majestic indifference that's required in order to be compassionate, you know. And I say indifference because to be compassionate can be ruled by narcissism and pride as well. Look how compassionate I am. So this is human nature, you know, it is simply human nature. So the self is the enemy. How do we suppress that engine that wants to not only be in command of the vehicle, but ultimately wants to find a cliff or a tree to run into? So that's really, for me, that's what my books are about. This endless struggle with self. Fame, you know, I had read a Buddhist text that said where one of the Buddhist saints said that fame was more difficult than disease in terms of overcoming, and gave an example of this hermit who for 40 years lived in a cave with the secret desire to be the most famous cave hermit of them all, you know. This idea of being seen is fraught with complications, you know. It's funny, whenever I talk to someone about AI, you know, I say, well, you know, the religions have a commonality in that to forget the self, this erasure of self, is something that is aspirational, you know? And now here it is. AI is going to erase self. Wait, wait, it's more complicated than that.
Mm.
But my point is that how do we abandon this idea that we are in training and one day we'll graduate, we will evolve, because it becomes so perverted that graduation means ruling. Graduation often means that the self will be coronated. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So that's the ultimate struggle, I think, of human beings that are lucky enough to have some sense before and not be completely corrupted by this idea of becoming more than that person that has a sense of wellness from being balanced, and that the self is tamed, and the self roars back messily, and then one has the awareness that this is not a good thing, and then the vanity of particularly it's not just of the West, but I could say the West Coast. I had a friend once that was morbidly obese, and I said, I used that line from 12-step groups where you're powerless over alcohol. And I said, why don't you just put a Post-it on the refrigerator that says, I am powerless over food? He was enormously offended, because it implied in his mind that powerless was not a good thing, So that's the self. That's the self that is writing that particular script for him, So this is what we have to face, this idea of powerlessness. I'm powerless over that fire, And part of me, because I write so much about impermanence, it's like, bring it on, I write endlessly about impermanence. I write about it tangentially. I write about it overtly, and here's a perfect example of that, your entire, yeah.
Yeah, I am interested in your thoughts about AI, because I don't know how much you think about it or care about it. I'm of the opinion that at this point, I feel like interesting writers will still exist, but what all AI does is just like stuff that's it's like predictive text to me, like that it will write the most predictable thing at this stage. So I don't see anyone who's like a idiosyncratic kind of writer, and this may be bound up with like my own notions of the self or whatever, but like anyone who's idiosyncratic, has their own kind of style, like I don't see how it's a threat to them, I don't know what you think about it.
Well, I don't think in terms of threat,
Yeah.
Because then you're protecting something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I feel that the phrase that needs to be banished when it comes to AI is "at this stage."
Yeah. Yes.
Because
It's very presentist, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, it's you go back 20 years and it would be at this stage. I can't see FaceTime, the idea of FaceTiming, on a watch. That was some gimmicky concept from Dick Tracy. You know what I mean? So I feel, it's funny. A friend and I were talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and my friend was saying, rock and roll, and this is not a young person. Rock and roll is dead. Rock and roll is like Victrola. It's like ragtime. It's like
It really is.
So this idea of my novels, as idiosyncratic as they are, in fact, Paul Schrader sent me. He was just like some boomer, getting into AI like a year ago. And he sent me and some other writers examples of their work when he gave them a prompt, and it was shitty, but he was interested. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And it's easy for me to say because I've written 15 novels and will be dead on this date. Do you know what I mean? But if I'm looking at my my bookshelf now, the writers that I'm interested are mostly long dead, and will AI be able to? The question is, for me, the more interesting is not will AI be able to create a Faulkner novel that, like high-end forgeries, you'll have difficulty, and in fact will fool expert forgers, and then we'll surpass that and be seminal and like a work that is on the shelf of next to As I Lay Dying and Sound and the Fury. Is that the question, or is the question, can AI from whole cloth, without imitating the style, write a book like Boccaccio's The Decameron, or a contemporary equivalent of Mark Twain, etc. I have no reason to feel that that's not possible. I believe it is possible. I believe that things will quickly and are already quickly moving at such a high speed. It's just not focused on art quite yet. Although I do know people in Hollywood that my manager was telling me he just saw a commercial for a prototype car. Maybe it was a Lamborghini. It was high-end director, high-end producer. And he said it was one of the most lavish and beautiful commercials he'd ever seen, completely AI. And I said, well, how much did it cost? And he said, well, if you had done that in without the use of AI, it would have been $3 million. You would have had to create and send the prototypes to Italy, et cetera, et cetera. It was $30,000. So this idea of a new Mission Impossible movie, all these movies have a whiff of AI anyway. Mm. If you listen to the radio and you listen to country music, maybe 94% of country music already sounds AI generated, even from the past. So AI will generate old, unfound country songs. You have an occasional song like He Stopped Loving Her Today or Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire that are not in that AI generative, that don't have that odor. But any of the contemporary things, Selena Gomez, Taylor Swift, J.J. Abrams, they all, to my ear, they sound interchangeable. No shade on Taylor, not that the Swifties are going to be listening to this, and that's just not my taste. If you listen to classical music. I was watching Glenn Gould, who was a pants full, right? What do you think of Chopin? Hate him. What do you think of Rachmaninoff? Hate him. And then even Leonard Bernstein and Glenn Gould were talking about Beethoven, and they said that Beethoven, if you go piece by piece, is fairly awful and predictable. But then Beethoven there's an element of Beethoven. Leonard Bernstein said a little obscurely that the next note could be no other note. But what they were really saying is that there was something ineffable about Beethoven that made Beethoven who he was. But if you listen to a classical music station and you're listening to the music of the time, the imitators of Mozart, the imitators of Bach. It may as well be AI, you know. So the idea, really, the question is, even in music, will AI not just give you, that's the flaw, to think that AI will give you elegant equivalence or marvelous equivalence, but no, will AI go beyond that and create something that produces tremendous yearning in the most sophisticated of us, which turns out that we are all machines in essence. Some of us are more glamorous machines. Some of us are cruder machines. But that's just a machine, me judging other machines. So I'm kind of looking forward. You could call it nihilism. I'm looking forward to the amputation caused by AI, because it will. This idea of what is reality. A friend of mine, Gavin de Becker, who has a new book out, he wrote The Gift of Fear. And Gavin, I've heard him talking on podcasts, and he says the one good thing he sees about AI is that it makes people question reality. I even heard a porn star talking about it on a podcast. You know, she's wondering, should I have AI do my porn now? You know, it's probably good enough or will be good enough. And this idea, she said that she felt AI. This was Sky Bree, right? She said she felt that AI, that soon no one would believe anything. I think that's become kind of a trope now. But he was talking about it in the spiritual sense, you know, that again, the great Buddhism tells us that all is an illusion, right? So AI is kind of a handmaiden to that teaching, you know. So that's a good thing, you know, the silver lining of the death of everything. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah.
It's already like prefigured though before the really via the internet, because you heard about people talking about filter bubbles and things like that. People kind of already before AI existed in their own different worlds, which like once you realize that, you get that kind of idea that it's all kind of illusory, you know, like so
you track yourself during the day.
Hmm.
You know, you make notes. The conversations that you've had during a typical day, maybe 2 steps from being moronic. Just street banter. You know?
Yeah.
Something you'd say in line when someone's taking too long at 7-Eleven, and the person next to you make some jokes about it. Your beloved, your partner, your mother, the things you say, the Dodger game last night. Do you know what I mean? None of it is memorable, do you know?
Mm.
So what is memorable? I'm not so arrogant to say that art is timeless and memorable. I think art, even the highest art, can be put on the same level as banter at 7-Eleven. It just, none of it matters, you know.
Mm.
What matters is what gives you pleasure. You know, in other words, I don't mean that in the hedonistic way, but what makes you feel that you are doing something that is in essence a kind of meditation on illusion. And that happens because you tune the world out.
Mm.
When you are focused on a book, you are focused at work, even that cashier. If she's doing that right, there, everything vanishes. And what is revealed, you know, well, that's what a lifetime of struggle takes. What is revealed in silence, in absence, in negation or suppression of self, you know, those are the important things, because it's laughable how little time we have here. Not really laughable, but the inevitability of our own deaths, which we can never predict. the fall in the middle of the night. I know more than I know a handful of people that are quadriplegics now because they've taken falls. And these were not rest home falls. These are people that were in good health, and in some cases, youngish, 50s, tripped and fell, fainted and fell in the wrong way. Quadriplegics now, one of whom I know has made kind of glorious and strange and beautiful adjustment to it. He says, I have no reason to be as grateful as I am today. So the sheer diabolical randomness of these lives is of note. The problem is, because human beings are so perverse, they get stuck, they get attached. They get attached to Palestine. They get attached to Israel. They get attached to their home. My beautiful home burned. That home was everything to me. There's so many distractions on the way to finding what is in the eye of the hurricane, that silence, you know what I mean? That's why we adore those planes that go into the eyes of the hurricane. The latest one, Melissa, it's a trope again, the rattle, 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 and they're going right into the eye. And then what? What are they looking at? Well, most of us can only interpret that as, wow, look, we don't go further than that. We can't, So the idea is to go further.
Yeah. With this book as well, I got you've got the epigraphs from Cummings and stuff. I got a liturgical aura to it, which was interesting. Do you sort of see Amputation as a kind of requiem for some of this, like, American belief as such, maybe, like talking about all of this stuff that we're talking about right now?
Well, the E.E. Cummings and the liturgical stuff was really part of Stephen Colbert's story for me.
Yeah, I did want to talk about that too. Yeah.
Apart from the baptism, that's one of his favorite poems. And he's a Catholic, very earnest Catholic,
and super into Tolkien.
And talks so much about love, and so I was baffled how he could be so poisonous when it came to RFK Jr., Now, I have no politics, none, but I was baffled because I think each of them has 16 siblings. They have the same amount of siblings. Their fathers both died violently. One was assassinated. The other died in a plane crash with his two sons, Colbert's two older brothers, while they were investigating colleges for those boys to go to. Both had substance issues. RFK Jr.'s were perhaps deeper than Colbert's. He's spoken about it publicly. Bobby Kennedy Jr., heroin, etc. Colbert has spoken publicly about liking tranquilizers too much at a certain point when he was younger and realizing he had to stop. So I became puzzled because I was watching interviews that Stephen Colbert did on talk shows with kind of obsequious priests, treating Colbert like he's a lay saint, a lay Catholic saint, and went to see the Pope Colbert in Italy and all that. I was thought, well, what if I make this journey of his something where he really does, he goes in search of his father and those brothers, and they do appear because he's hallucinating from the pain at a certain point. And I began to like Colbert during the writing of this book. I didn't dislike him, but I thought I needed to explore this kind of unorthodox nastiness, at least unorthodox when it came to his Christian precepts, his Catholic precepts, So yeah, so the baptism idea came, I wasn't going to divide the book in two with who by fire, who by water. It's from the Jewish prayer.
Mm.
Until it occurred to me that would solve Karen Bass's problems on a personal level. And she was still dealing with the death of her daughter many, many years ago. And to be cleansed by water, is a kind of universal impulse that human beings have. And I very much like the idea of it. And I haven't been baptized myself, but I certainly wouldn't be averse to it. So that was, I guess, a nod. I think when I was writing the Marvel Universe, there was a baptism, and I did go to a church and watch that, and it's always moving, to me, always very moving. So liturgical, I love that word, by the way.
So do I. That's why I said it.
I would say that there's a sacred aspect to all of my work. And I think perhaps that's what you were sensing, the scent of the sacred, Yeah.
Yeah, and often juxtaposed with the profane.
Yeah.
But with the Stephen Colbert section, which I loved as well, I love this almost syncretism of like his Catholic faith and then the Lord of the Rings stuff, like because obviously Tolkien was Catholic too, but like this these mixed symbols that happened in that sequence, which I've never been in that situation, but I can imagine that something like that perhaps happens. Where
You've never been pinned under a tree?
No, I haven't. No, I lie. I've never.
At Maria Shriver's house in
No.
What are the odds?
No, I mean, in a similar distraught situation or whatever. But it was really interesting how, and I don't know if you were making a comment on this is conscious or whatever, but how things like Lord of the Rings or, I don't know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe or like nerd things become a kind of religion or a stand-in for religion. And like, I feel like that there was something to that for me, like how it sort of just mixed in with his religion there. It was cool.
Well, I think the archetypes, the tapestry of archetypes is a need that all of us have, to wrap ourselves in that tapestry. And he, as a boy, has said that book helped to save him after that terrible loss. I mean, staggering for a young boy to lose his older brothers and his father in one fell swoop. And I think all of us can point to something that gave us tremendous comfort, Dickens has given me tremendous comfort. The Arabian Tales, have given me tremendous comfort. Rachmaninoff, who Glenn Gould loathes, tremendous comfort in that after the tide of the work washes over you, you're left with silence, and this riddle, this enigma of why was I so moved by this? The best art for me is always art that makes me want to create art, So it's there's a purity about it. And the waters is an apt, I think, analogy again, the baptismal waters of art, because behind great art is great mystery, Why did Faulkner's The Wild Palms have that effect it had on me? Well, I would say the title alone triggered something, a domino effect of mystery for me, And then, I thought for many years, I thought I would call all of my work, the overall title would be Wild Psalms, So how can I explain that? Well, I can't explain it. And I don't have much interest in being a scholar of Faulkner. I haven't even read all of Faulkner. But how is it that certain things have such epic and long-lasting powerful effects on us, knowing that those things too will be erased, So it's a conundrum. It's one of the conundrums of being on the planet, this mixture of the illusion of permanence with the utter naked fact of impermanence. It's a balance. That's what makes human beings, I think, so poignant ultimately. Poor us. Poor glorious.
Poor us. Speaking of impermanence, actually, one of the things I've always wanted to ask you as well is, ever since I read Dead Stars, when 2012 was a very interesting year. I think that's when that was published, if I recall correctly. But it was sort of the start of a lot of this like meme culture stuff, a lot of the culture being generated on the internet, which at the time, a lot of people like my age and younger were saying like, be careful what you put on the internet because it'll be there forever. But like, the internet actually isn't forever. Like things, I think it's just a consequence of the churn or whatever, that like things just get forgotten. Like I have like short stories that I published on websites that I just cannot find anymore because the websites have disappeared. So there's an impermanence to the internet as well. And one of the things I've always wanted to ask you is, for someone who isn't visibly incredibly online, how do you like so precisely, like I remember reading Dead Stars and being like, how does he get it? Like how does he do it? Like, you're not a millennial, obviously.
I
like
know.
how do you do this? Like, is it just deep research? Is it like conversations you have with people? Like it's something that I've always wanted to ask you. So
yeah, it's funny because I just got an email from like a 20-year-old who goes to college in upstate New York, right? And he said he was doing his thesis on Dead Stars, right? And it was such a touching note because he was nervous, it was obvious. And he said, would you be able to have a phone call, etc.? And I said, sure. And he was in shock, you know what I mean? And he mentioned that, that without the because he's a Zoomer, he basically said that the internet had this profound shock on him, and those friends his own age, even though they were born into it, in essence. I've been asked this question. I think some of it is that there's a kind of genius. I'm not using that word in the way it sounds, for this chameleon-like mimicry for me, and that I feel all right with it because I have such a deep attachment and obsession with language, the virus of language, as William Burroughs called it, that wearing that cloak in all of its iterations is of great interest to me. And I can absorb style with a very deep but limited exposure. I did that a lot with Marvel Universe as well. Looking at Selma Blair when she announced that she had MS, and my character announces the same thing. But it was infused with Selma Blair's sort of cavalier, bubbly emotions. And then for my books, including Met Gala, language became something that I had to not only glean, sometimes invent, but if you want to call it research, I would talk to friends, millennials and younger people about words, and I do have young fans now, strangely to me. And so it's really, I was talking to, I think Brett was reading one of my books and said there was so much in it he didn't understand, but he's got a much younger partner. And so Todd was explaining to him, these things. But Brett and I have always had this conversation because both of us in our work, they used to say, there's all of these rules, In television, I used to write for television, and this was before, in the ancient days, this idea that every episode had to have a finality to it. And then, of course, that morphed into miniseries, and that morphed into multiple seasons of shows where you didn't know where anything was going. And the lie and the taboo in publishing was, never include products in your, the names of products, or don't use the names of minor celebrities because people won't know who they are in 20 years, and don't use too many major celebrity names or well-known names because it's unseemly, whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? So of course I ignored all of that. And, but really the answer to your question, I think, is not only this kind of genius for absorption and inhabitation and mimicry, but also a kind of orgiastic enthrallment and obsession and involvement with language itself,
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any burner accounts? So are you actually on like Twitter and Instagram and stuff, or can you reveal, Bruce, that
the way that I'm on is I think for one of my books, my publisher had an Instagram account with some failed effort to promote a book, and so that exists. So I'm able to see Instagram. I might be on X. I don't know. I think I can go on Substack. I'm not really sure, but I try. You have to avoid it because Substack, it's even podcasts. It's you can spend 10 hours of the day. I'll save it for when I have that fall in the middle of the night and I'm a quadriplegic. There will be no issues. All of your time will be filled. You know what I mean? Substack, sometimes these articles now are 30,000 words. I mean, it's different now, but I didn't even have a website until the Marvel Universe got canceled. And I created that website just to dump the full manuscript of Marvel Universe onto, so people could read it for free, and it's still there. But so people can reach out to me through that website now. That's how this sweet kid in New York did. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So do you find that this is sort of like a ascetic practice to like refusing to participate but still kind of like bearing witness to all this stuff, or?
No, because I only use it when I need to. It's PRN, like medication, as needed. And like next door, the neighborhood website that infiltrates amputation, right?
Mm.
That was really fun and helpful. It was comic relief for me in a way, and I could make it dark. I think Dead Stars might have been one of the first books that utilized the darkness of the internet in terms of including it in a work of fiction.
Mm.
But I have to tell you, in between writing books, I am completely vacant. After this podcast, I'll go back to playing casino on my phone.
Oh yeah.
My girlfriend my wife likes to say that I'm just drooling. I'm in bed drooling. It's like I have no interest. My news source is the Daily Mail.
I used to work for the Daily Mail.
No shit.
Yeah.
Love the
I
Daily
used to be a show business reporter for the Daily Mail.
Well, that's perfect. I love the Daily Mail.
It really is an art. It's an underappreciated art to like get those headlines just so people like click through.
It's appreciated by me, and I like the Daily Mail because they pretend to be political. They're not. We love Trump. We hate Trump. We love Mamdani. Mamdani's a piece of shit. But you get the news from them.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter Biden's laptop, Daily Mail.
Yeah.
So what else is there to read? I can't read. I don't care about any of it. So it's obscure fashion accounts on Instagram. Jack Mason, who is going to write a book for us, Arcade, who has a podcast called The Perfect Nationalist.
Oh, I didn't know that. We're friends with Jack. We know Jack.
Yeah, he's been on the show.
I love him. He's a phenomenal writer. And he's writing a book for us. So I follow him. I email him to get hints on perfume. Hey, what do you think about this one? You know what I mean? But it's just this idea of writing for Substack.
Well, I write for Substack, and yeah, you're right. It's a grind.
No. I'm not talking about other people. I'm glad they do, because some of the stuff like Metropolitan Review I really enjoy reading. But the idea of I can barely tie my shoes, If I'm working on a book, that's one thing.
Yeah. All the best artists are kind of like that, though. Like, I think on Substack, I even said this, that like, the best artists are sort of like drooling retards, and then they just get possessed by something and, produce something amazing. I'm not saying that's you, Bruce. I'm
glad you said it. No, I'm glad you said it, because I think when I say it, people think I'm just being pretentious or I'm bullshitting. That you hit it. Drooling retard. You hit it. Worrying about my weight, or like, did I, have I eaten too much today? And I mean, just absurdities,
Yeah. And so, but yes, obviously, we love this book. Like, Presta, did you have any thoughts or questions for Bruce?
I guess on the title, Amputation, you said like how it was the Palisades and Altadena, but like amputated from greater LA. But then also within the book, I guess, like there was also lots of relationships between peoples, and it seems like every one of those relationships like got severed in some way, like Esther with her father, and then finally with her husband. And I won't like ruin the plot for people, but like, was that like an intentional extension of the metaphor?
No, I like it though. I hadn't thought of it. Then you have the Japanese woman who actually in her 90s gets a 4th-degree burn and has an amputation. That was one of the funniest scenes for me to write. The young doctor, It hadn't occurred to me, but I think in all of my books and there's that theme of relationships being severed. But I think really in any novel worth its salt repeats that, because that is thematic in this world of permanence and impermanence that we live in. that it all goes away. It's really brought home whenever you see those news pieces about the couple that were married 60 years, and she dies before he does, and they wheel him in, and he holds her hand, and then he drops dead. It all goes away, you know what I mean? But it hadn't occurred to me till now, because it was so visceral when I initially drove through both of those cities, and was just completely stunned, because you drive miles and miles through total devastation, and then you'd see the downtown area in the distance, and you'd think, I'll get some relief, I'll get some coffee. Downtown destroyed, which was so anti-Norman Rockwell, it's so Armageddon, that how can a downtown be destroyed of a city by fire, by fire? I hadn't pressed a thought of it until you mentioned it. But yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, I didn't think of that either. That's a great observation. So when you look at the fires and all the spin that we talked about before, do you have a belief in revelation, or do you think the Armageddon is just another kind of media event now, and you're chronicling that? Or was there something amputated? Was there something like very kind of visceral about this that takes it beyond that kind of media event space?
No. For me, because I'm from here, I was pretty numb to it all because I was busy evacuating and people and finding places for them to live in the interim. And I think I was also sort of wrestling with the ogre of this new work that may or may not have been presenting itself and all that. But then I was watching the Grammys, right? And I've seen this before when we've had fires. They bring fire people up on stage and, here's the battalion. And then they show footage. And I just broke down and sobbed, That's the first time me watching the Grammys, right? Because these are places that if you were raised in this town, you have an emotional connection to, So this was not, regardless of something I overheard at a high-end coffee shop where a woman said, "Have you driven through there? It's like Gaza." No, it's not like Gaza. It's not like the Ukraine. It's not like Nigeria. It is what it is. But heightened and illuminated, it's symbolic of the world of illusion and the world of impermanence, So no, the apocalypse is already here. It's already happened, there's a great, in the Mahabharata, I think Krishna is the great warrior, and he says he does not want to go into battle because his teacher is on the battlefield and those that he loves and knows, and he's told they are already dead, So we are already dead in a sense, and that's not said morbidly. We are not here for very long, so we are both living and dead at once. And so I didn't see it as a seminal event, I just, like any smash and grab artist, I saw it for me as something that might scratch a holy itch that had developed for me. You know what I mean?
And like the old Greek word apocalypse actually means a revealing of something. So there's it's not just about the destruction of something. Through that destruction, something is revealed to us as well. And I think that's part of what the book's about. But I really enjoyed it, as I do all of your books, Bruce. So I would thank you for joining us today. It's been a great
Very
honor.
happy to see you both, and it's always enjoyable.
Did you have the book is available now? Yes.
Oh yes, and I read the audiobook too, so it's available as an audiobook. Yeah.
Oh, those Wagnerian dulcet tones, reading the text, amazing.
And that reading that, doing an audiobook, it's like Gaza.
Yeah, it would be. It's a lot of work, right? It takes hours, doesn't it?
Yeah, but a 200-page book, believe me, I've read 700-page books, and it's a horror. It's like Nigeria. It's like slaughter of Christians. It's just it's fun. Everything is fun. Like a supposedly fun thing that I probably will do again, to paraphrase the self-hanged DFW, but whatever,
Yeah. Okay. Fressa, do you have any final thoughts or?
Is She Stopped Loving You Today, She Stopped Loving Him Today, your favorite George Jones song?
I would say probably, yeah. I mean, but I would say, they used to say that that he was the Rolls Royce of country singers, right? And that really resonated with me, So I really listened to George Jones. I mean, is one of those songs that you have to stop listening to because you hear it so much. There needs to be a moratorium, like Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, and then you can come back to it and it can have impact again, but you need to give it like a 2 or 3 year rest between listenings. So I listen to George Jones, things that are far less known, and the voice is what captivates me, that this anarchic alcoholic, this violent man who, if you see him later, you can see him on YouTube. He does a talk show with Johnny Cash, and he's just the sweetest possum as he could be, But those days, how did he live through it? No idea how he lived through it. And that voice, And I was watching Ken Burns' documentary about country recently, and apparently George Jones, when he finished recording that song, he said to the producer, who had to bend his arm to do it, he said, "Nobody's going to listen to this morbid motherfucker," something along that term, those lines, But I really just hear the voice, It's almost like Rachmaninoff. I don't listen the way you listen to like a Rolling Stone or something, But I get this deep abstract satisfaction from his presence and his mood, and his being, the essence of who he was, the way you could get from a single paragraph of Dickens, So it's like that for me.
Wonderful. Well, I don't think there's going to be a moratorium because we're probably going to put it on the end of this episode. Is that what you're thinking, Fresta? So,
you're what? I missed it.
We're probably going to put that song on the end of the episode.
I had a couple of others in mind, but we could use that.
No, that's beautiful. Or Ring of Fire at the beginning.
Oh, all right.
That seems more thematically on.
That's great.
No, but the George Jones thing, fuck thematics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love that. Do what you do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think we'll title this episode "Fuck Thematics," featuring Bruce Wagner. Thank you so much once again.
Yes, thank you
for joining us. It's been great to talk to you.
Thank you.
And come on again. Yeah, anytime.
When I write that book that I just am planning not to write.
All right. Thanks so much, Bruce.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Love you till I die. She told him, "You'll
forgetting time. As the years went slowly by, she still preyed upon his mind. He kept her picture on his wall, went half crazy now and then, but he still loved her through it all, hoping she'd come back again. Kept some letters by his bed, dated 1962. He had underlined in red every single I love you. I went to see him just today. Oh, but I didn't see no tears. All dressed up to go away. First time I'd seen him smile in years. He stopped loving her today. They placed a wreath upon his door, and soon they'll carry him away. He stopped loving her today. You know, she came to see him one last time. Oh, and we all wondered if she would. And it kept running through my mind. This time, he's over her for good. He stopped loving her today. They placed a wreath upon his door, and soon they'll carry him away. He stopped loving her today.